So it's been a pretty good while since we talked on here. And one thing I wanted to do tonight was, since I didn't record it last time, get you to go back over what you did after you got out of high school and up until I guess you started teaching.
Well, I was the first graduating class from Pamlico County High School, 1952. And I'd been working on the farm for a while, on weekends and here and there. And after I graduated from high school, I worked on the farm a while. And then I went to Newbern and started working at the A&P store. And I worked there probably almost a year, maybe a year before.
That was the one that was near the waterfront?
No, that was right down there in 5 Points.
Okay.
Sort of in that area.
Okay. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I worked there 5.5 days a week for $35 a week. And one of the guys I grew up with said, let's go volunteer for the draft. We can be in for 2 years and still get 4 years of college. And another buddy wanted me to join. That would have been for 3 years. And God, I'm always been glad I didn't do that. So anyway, I went to carrier and repeater school, to signal school. And that was probably for 6 months. And that was in Fort Gordon. I think it was Camp Gordon then. I think it's Fort Gordon now.
What was it?
So I
What
went
kind
to
of
basic
school?
training there and signal school.
Oh, signal school.
Yeah. I learned how to, we had this great big contraption about the size of a door, and it would carry 3 telephone circuits and 1 teletype circuit. And our job is to keep it working right. And where that big thing would carry 3 circuits, now something big as your fingernail would probably carry 10,000 or 1 million, who knows?
Right.
So anyway, I went to Korea for 14.5 months, and it's not what I'd call a vacation. It was hot as hell when it was hot, and it was cold when it was cold. And when we had the rainy season, it rained. It really rained. So after my Army experience, I was out a month or 2 and went to East Carolina and signed up and started in the middle of the year. And so I went to summer school the first year to fill out the first complete year. So I guess I started in 55 and graduated in 59. Then I went back for 2 or 3 summers and got my master's there. And after that, I came to Delaware. Some guy at Newbern some guy was a basketball coach, and he was telling me about being a produce inspector in the summertime. And so he's the one put me on that. And I worked around North Carolina for a while, and then I came to Delaware, and that's where they got up with me to teach here. Mr. Brittingham, I did the interview in his backyard while I was working in the garden. More spam on my phone.
Wait a minute. I lost my concentration. So you interviewed with the produce inspector in his backyard, or the
No, that was a teaching job. I I had been a produce inspector up here during the summer. And then Mr. Brittingham got up with me. He called East Carolina, found out I was up here. And I came to Milton, interviewed. I was not really sure I wanted to take the job. I was going to go back, stay in the inspection part and go to Florida. But he talked me into staying 1 year, and that ended up 32 years.
Did he call ECU specifically looking for you or looking for anybody that was up there?
Yeah, he just needed a phys ed teacher. He thought he had a guy that has graduated from East Carolina, and that guy took another job at the last minute, probably more pay. And so I said, okay, I'll take it for 1 year. I'll try it.
So what was his connection to ECU? East Carolina.
The principal?
Yes.
I don't know. I guess, I don't know. He just knew it was at sort of a teacher school. And so he called there, and they have, they have a thing there that helps you get a job.
So how much did the produce inspector job pay?
Not bad at all. You got 2 checks. You got one from the federal government, and you got one from the state. One of them you paid taxes on, one of them you did not. Because since you were on the road all the time, I guess they were trying to compensate for that. So I don't remember which one, state or federal, was tax-free. Probably state. And so I worked in Dover a while, and then I was sent to Greenwood, Delaware, where I met the Messick family and the Vinson family. And I inspected for them all summer before I started teaching in Milton. And I was like the son that the Vinsons never had. I'd get home at night and they always had dinner prepared. And they had one daughter, and they had a little 6-year-old that followed me around. Well, I was sat around, I didn't do anything unless somebody brought in a truckload of peppers. And well, they ended up having 3 daughters. But yeah, they were like family to me.
Is that where you stayed?
So I lived in Greenwood for a while in a mobile home, and then I moved to between Lewis and Rehoboth, where I rented from a teacher that owned a hotel. The JV coach and I shared an apartment, and she almost froze us out, so we moved to another house. And of course, he was sort of short. He's had a Napoleon complex, and he got fired the first year. His name was Alvino Ray, and there was a famous band leader with that name. I don't know where he was any kid or not. Never did ask him. So that took me to Delaware. 32 years later, I retired in 91 and been enjoying retirement ever since. But I didn't like the Army, but that GI Bill was worth everything to me.
So when you were in Korea, was the Korea War going on?
It was $110 a month. Huh?
$110 a month.
The war was over. I went for college, and it's amazing that you could, get by on $110 a month. paid for everything. Now, hell, you can't even buy a book for that.
Mm-mm.
And at one time, Jack was there and Reggie was there. Reggie had a scholarship working in the infirmary. But at one time, you know, we were all sort of milking that $110. And of course, I would go home every weekend, get my clothes washed and, you know, eat there.
So, considering that all three of you boys went to college, what happened to Mama? Why did she hate school so much? She always said she
I
hated
do not
school.
know. She did. She always said she hated school. And it's not like she was bad. She got good grades and all. So I don't know what it was that turned her off. I have no idea.
So in Korea, did you stay in the same place the whole time?
Oh,
14
no, no,
months?
no, no. No, I was with I-Corps. I see that on TV every once in a while. It's a big black with something white in the middle. And then the other outfit I was with was called Lightning. It looked like a lightning streak right down a little orange red patch. I see them on TV every once in a while. But we had we called attachments. So we would do anything to get away from the main company because you had to work 8-hour shifts, you know, and you had to work. If you went out on attachments, as long as the circuits were working, as long as you had telephone and teletype working, you didn't do anything. So one time we set up a basketball goal and shot baskets, but we had a little tent full of library books. And God, I was reading a book every day. So I stayed one place and then they'll send you to another detachment. I don't know why. I got moved around here and there, but anything was better than going back to the main base where I was stationed.
So the war was over. The Korean War was over.
Yeah, but there was nothing but dirt roads. And we were closed in with barbed wire and all because, you know, they could steal the handkerchief out of your back pocket. And of course, they were poor, you know. When we would eat, we would always have leftovers, and all those kids would hang around and reach through the barbed wire for anything you had left over, where it was mashed potatoes or anything. And most of the soldiers would save a little bit for them, but it made you really appreciate the hungry they went through. Yeah, it was a bad time for them. And they had an older population, sort of like an army. And once you got drafted in there, you didn't get out until they decided you got out. So, not a place I would want to go and live. But I know it's changed now. But I was stationed at a little place called Weejambu, and before the war, that was the Hollywood of Korea. That's where they made all their movies.
Really?
Weejambu.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the purpose of you
We
being?
slept in a tent for a while, and that was pretty cool. Huh?
Go ahead.
Do what?
Just go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Yeah, first we slept in tents. We slept in tents, and that was fairly warm. We had sleeping bags on a little cot. And then later on, they put us in Quonset huts. You know what I'm talking about? A Quonset hut, they sort of round things, go from one side to another.
Oh yeah, like
And they were long. Well, anyway, they were not as warm as the tents, I didn't think. And we had a houseboy that we probably paid a carton of cigarettes a week because to them, you know, you could buy a carton of cigarettes for $1. but on the black market, those guys could really sell it. Everybody wanted American cigarettes. So there was nowhere to go. I went to Seoul one time for one weekend, but there was nowhere to go. I mean, some of them went AWOL, went over the fence to get to the prostitutes. And I just wanted to be clean and get the heck out of there and get back home. And that's what I did. Now, I did go to Japan about every 6 months. Called it R&R, rest and recuperation. The military, the soldiers called it I&I, intoxication and intercourse. We stayed a week. You stay there a week and then go back. And, you know, whenever your time comes up, they sent you back over there. But we always went to Tokyo. And I got thoroughly lost walking around there one time. And I'd walk up to people, ask them directions, and they couldn't speak. And they ignored you. They walked right by you, made you feel like crap. Finally, I found somebody in a little store that showed me how to get back to my hotel. But they had those streamlined trains that absolutely flew. Absolutely, put wings on them, they would fly, and they really went fast. I did ride them a time or two. We went to a place called Yokohama, which was close to, and that's where the huge Buddha. I'm sure you've seen it sometime, and you could go up inside and all, but there was a lot of Buddhas. That was one of their religions.
How long did it take to go from Korea to Tokyo?
Just a few hours by plane. We flew in those troop planes, and it was really rough flying. You fly over those hills with those drafts, and the bottom would fall out, and you catch your breath, and you didn't think that thing was going to ever start flying again. But we didn't care. We just wanted to get at Japan for a while. Japan was civilized, and where Korea was not. But I liked the Korean people. I really did. But it was a tough life. Yeah, there was prostitutes everywhere, just like in all war zones. But
so what was the countryside like in Korea where you're at? Was it mountainous or?
All of it was moderate sized hills. Everything was hills, but they're not giant mountains or anything. And there was no trees, because you see the people out and about collecting straw. I guess they tried to burn it. They couldn't last long, but there was very few trees. I don't know where they would cut them down and used them up or what. I don't know where they'd been destroyed in the war. I don't know. But tough life. Tough life. I've heard people that would take trash to the dump and take leftover garbage to the dump, and they would tell me that the women would be fighting each other for just anything they could get their hands on. Just pure fighting. Not a life, but I grew up in a poor family, but I appreciated when I got back from Korea. I appreciated everything I had.
Well, the good thing about living on a farm is at least you had food, right? Most of the time.
Yeah, well, we had food. We had food in Korea, but you know,
Well,
you had
the Korean people, those Korean people didn't.
Oh no,
Much of it.
no, they didn't. We had powdered eggs, powdered milk for most of the time until right at the end. A lot of the people left and went to Hawaii. The whole outfit pulled out. And they sent me to one place where I stayed for a while. And when I walked in the kitchen, there stood my distant cousin that was in charge of the cafeteria. John, what were those people down in Lowland? His name was John Evans. I don't know. I can't remember his name now. It's been so long. But I ate really great while I was there. He kept me fed. And then they pulled his whole outfit out, sent it to Hawaii. And so, that's what we kept hoping would happen to us, but it never did.
So how did you get to Korea?
It was an experience, and ship took about 30 days. The first day out, you got about 3,500 vomiting, seasick, miserable. God, I wouldn't go on a cruise for it. You couldn't pay me enough to go on a cruise. So the first day, everybody was seasick. They made us go up topside, and people vomiting everywhere, and they had the water hose washing things down. Coming back, nobody got seasick. We're too happy to be going home. And it took about 30 days. And they gave us quinine for malaria. Malaria was really bad there. And when you came home, you got malaria, you got quinine every day. And now it's supposed to be good for cramps. They cut it out for a while, but I know on some of these sparkling waters, tonics and stuff, you can still see they have quinine. But they wanted to make sure we didn't bring malaria back to the States. And when we got back, they said they're going to put us on a plane and fly us back to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. But they didn't. They put us on a darn train, and that took about 5 days, on that thing. So we got to see a lot of the United States, but from the train track, you didn't really get to see anything. They would stop periodically, but most of the time they wouldn't let us off the train. So we went to Fort Jackson, and that's where I went in for the first night. And that's where I got discharged.
So like right after you got back, you got discharged?
Yeah.
Wow. So 2 years.
I've been in for 2 years. Yeah.
So 24 months, 14, we're in Korea. 2 months, we're on a ship. And another, and you had training in school.
Basic training was, I think, 8 weeks basic
40.
training. And then after that, I was 6 months of, signal training.
Wow.
For the Signal Corps.
Huh.
And Paul Woodard and I went in together. He was from Bayboro. His dad was a judge there. And he was stationed 6 or 8 blocks from me. So we used to get together on weekends and hang out and go places.
In Korea?
He had a twin sister, and he had a bunch of brothers that used to play baseball there. They all were pretty good. He dropped out of high school and went to Cherry Point and finished high school there. He could work and go to school too. He went to NC State, and he had never gotten a B in his life. He got a B. So he transferred to University of North Carolina and become a lawyer. And he was Senator Irvin's right-hand man for a long time. And then somewhere in the process, we lost touch. I've been online trying to figure out if he was still alive, and I never could figure out if he is or not. He was brilliant. God, he was one of the most brilliant person I ever knew. His sister married one of the Prescott boys. I'm sure that name's still floating around Pamlico County.
Yeah.
There was, I played baseball with one, and there was another couple, one of them older than me. They lived up sort of toward Olympia.
I worked for a woman named Pat Prescott one time. She was married to Jerry, I think, or somebody like that. I don't.
Yeah, there was two of them. Jerry, I think they were twins. Jerry and Larry, maybe. I think Jack, they were the same age of Jack. They went to East Carolina too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only job I ever got based on what I knew instead of who I knew
Uh,
before photography, anyway.
yeah.
And
You never did regret leaving the yacht place, did you?
that's funny because somebody asked me that yesterday. No, I never did regret it. No,
I don't think Neil did either, did he?
I don't think so. No, I think he's fine now.
Yeah.
No, I never got this part of the story out yesterday when he asked me, but no, I never regretted leaving, but it's been interesting, and it's been quite a while since this has happened, but I've dreamed 3 different times over the years that I had to go back to work there.
Mm.
And each time it was like the first time I went back in the first dream, the second dream it was the second time I went back. And in the third dream, it was the third time I went back.
Mm.
So each dream built on the previous one.
Wow. Well, I kept having this recurring nightmare that I had to go back to Korea, and I couldn't get them to understand I've already been there and done that. And they shipped my butt out anyway. And that used to happen all the time. Not my favorite dream. It was a nightmare to me.
But the other thing about Hatteras was I got what he did. This guy asked me, how did I get the job? I said, well, there was somebody, I had quit working at the quarry where my dad worked. I started working at Hatteras at the boat place because somebody my dad knew and talked to, said they needed a person to come on nights. And I went and started the day after Christmas in 1977, went in and worked nights in the paint shop. And the first thing I did was paint a boat bottom outside in December and froze my butt off.
Oh my God.
But
yeah.
I didn't do that for too long before a job came open on day shift, putting a hardware on, which included just different hardware, including the name of the boat, the logo of the boat, swim platforms, and just different horns and different things. So I did that for a while before they moved that job and me to another department. And I hadn't been doing it long, but the supervisor of the new department didn't know anything about the job. And I never bothered him about it. I wasn't constantly going to him saying, what do I got to do about this? What I got to do about that? I just took care of it. I figured it out. And since I did that, he rewarded me with the biggest raises I could possibly get every review. Nobody ever got raises like I did. It was like, the usual raise might have been 10 or 15 cents. And I was getting like 85 and 90 cent an hour raises. And so in less than a year of me being there, I had already gone to the top of the pay grade and couldn't make any more money. So I went from like $3 an hour to 6 something an hour in less than a year.
Wow.
And when I left 7 years later, I was still only making $9 and something. But I was saving.
Well, back then I was making 45 cents an hour on the farm. And between my sophomore and junior year in college, I went, well, with the same guy I went in the Army with. He had a brother that worked in Baltimore. And so I got a job at Domino's sugar place. And there I made $2.25 an hour. And I thought I was making all the money in the world. They'd come around at the end of an 8-hour shift. Anybody want to work? Yeah, I'll take another one. Because, comparing that to 45 cents, and I was sending the money home, sort of saving it. Jack was in college, he needed help and all that. But I went back the next summer and there was no jobs. And that's when I started working in that sweet corn and around Trent, Merritt, whatever they call it. And there, one of the guys, an inspector, he was telling me about, if you want to do this in summertime, go to, where was it? Chakawinity, I believe. Anyway, I went to potato school for a week. We called it Potato University. We learned everything there was about a potato.
PU?
Huh?
PU?
He what?
So it was PU for short? Potato University?
Yeah. Well, when I was in North Carolina, that's all I inspected was potatoes. And when they shipped me to Delaware, I was thinking that's what I was going to do. If I might have done it for a while, but then I started doing peppers, and I worked with a guy up there that Michael got to know years later, that owned this big farm up there, potato farm and stuff. But yeah, when I was in Baltimore that summer, God, I went to all the home ball games. And they were not very good. And I used to get in there real early and let them, where they played pepper. And you know what I'm talking about, pepper. Yeah, they got people, lined up there and they're cracking it real hard and they feel it and throw it and cracking it. And they're, they just, fairly close together. And I used to watch them get batting practice. I love that. And I remember they had a shortstop that couldn't hit his weight. They were a really bad team. But anyway, that was a different year. And I went back the next year and there was no job. Jack went with me that year. And while he was gone, Linda dated somebody. That killed him. So we ended up hitchhiking. We hitchhiked out of Washington, D.C. and caught a truck all the way to Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. We spent the night in the YMCA or something, and then hitchhiked on home the next day. And we got back, and that's when we took the job working in the sweet corn. That's when it was just beginning to get popular down there. We just eat regular old horse corn that was young and fresh. We didn't care. And then people started raising this sweet corn. And Reggie worked in a store in Oriental for somebody. I can't remember the name. I think the guy was sort of a politician. If I heard the name, I would probably know it. But Reggie also worked in those camps. He worked in those camps for a few summers.
Oh yeah, Camp Seagull, Camp Seafarer.
Yeah.
So Lily and I And then later, Lyle and I joined what was called the Y Guides. Well, for Lily, it was the Y Princess. And for Lyle, it was the Y Guides. It used to be called Indian Princess and Indian Guides, but it's through the YMCA.
Yeah.
And so one weekend during the spring, we would go down to Camp Seagull or Camp Seafarer and spend the weekend and, do camp things for the weekend. And so there were photos on the wall from the 50s. And so Uncle Reggie was in some of those photos.
As a kid or as a counselor?
As a counselor.
Okay.
Yeah. So. So what store did he work in Oriental? Not the grocery store?
It was a little, yeah, it was right down there close to the bridge. Maybe a half a block from the bridge. I'm trying to say Quillen, but that was not the guy's name. If I heard it, I'd know. But I do think he worked in that store for a while.
Was it the grocery store that's the building is still there near the marina?
Yeah, it's right down there by that. If it's still there, it was right down there by that restaurant, just, right there at the bridge.
Okay. That's a different store then. No, I remember I used to go down there.
It was not a very big one.
I would used to go to the grocery store there, and that building is next to the marina now. But there was a grocery store back then when I used to go with Grandma and Granddaddy to the grocery store. No
Right.
black Chevrolet.
Probably the same one. Yeah, probably the same one where Reggie worked. To think somebody in his position came from Trent or Merritt, whatever it's called, a little town with two names. And yeah, for him to raise through the ranks to become what he did is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Certainly proud of him.
Do you have any memory of when my parents got married? Because nobody ever thought to ask, but they got married in a church in Bridgeton, just them and like another couple for witnesses, I guess. Or maybe I don't you know what? I don't even know if there was another couple there. Maybe it could have been the preacher's wife who was a witness. I don't remember. But nobody ever thought to ask about that. Like, why didn't even, it's one thing to go get married and not have anybody there, but I guess it's surprising that Mama didn't want to have her parents there. So that was 1957. So where were you at in 1957? Delaware?
I was in college, second year in college.
Oh, so you were still, yeah, that's right. You were at ECU. So they got married in the summer of 57. So you don't remember anything about that time?
Not a lot about it. Was your mom, granddad, and grandma there?
No.
Did any? Nobody?
No.
My parents were not there?
No.
See, I didn't know that. I mean, I had no idea.
No, all I do know is a week or 2 weeks, I don't remember which. Before that, my dad's sister, Marie, got married and had a really big wedding. And my other aunt, Aunt Nancy, has said that because of that big wedding, she didn't have a big wedding. That she just had, and I don't remember now if she just went to the courthouse or what. I don't know. I think they got married in the church, but they just had just a little tiny wedding. So I don't know if that had something to do with why they just decided to go get married and not have anybody there, or what.
I have no idea.
Hmm. Did you go to Uncle Reggie's wedding in Greenville? That would have been, you probably were in Delaware by then.
I don't remember the wedding. I don't think so. I don't know it. I don't know.
Mama was in that wedding.
Yeah.
How did he meet Lois anyway?
I think at East Carolina, didn't he?
Probably.
I think so. And she was from Greenville too. So, yeah. How did your mom meet your dad?
Mom worked at the telephone company.
Yeah, I remember that.
And my dad's first cousin, Catherine Register at the time, introduced them. And in fact, last time I was at the house in Newbern, there's a bunch of pictures there. And I was going through them, and there was a picture of Mom. There was a picture of the wedding party for Catherine and Wally. She married Wally Powers. So anyway, there was the wedding party, a picture of the wedding party with Mom in it. So she was part of the wedding when they got married. Now, I don't know what year that was. I don't know what year they got married, because they have a son that's a year older than me. So they would have gotten married, more or less probably a year before that.
I remember your mom lived in a house on that road to Newbern. It was off on the right, back in the little trees or something. I remember when she lived there. That's about all I remember. I know she worked at the telephone company.
She lived somewhere downtown for a while. I don't know. Where's the house you're talking about? Like going from Pamlico County?
It's before you get into town.
From Newbern? I mean, from Pamlico County?
No. If you came from where your mom's house is, going in that back road to Newbern, on the same one that Uncle Pug and them used to live off to the left.
Yeah.
There was a little, I was thinking it was sort of like a brown house out in the trees, but I don't know. It's been too damn long. I don't know. I have no idea.
So I don't recall ever hearing about that. She lived by herself or with some other girls?
I have no idea. Probably a bunch of other girls, because I think that's when she worked at the telephone company.
I thought she lived downtown one time, but maybe not. Maybe that's just when she lived with Kay. So speaking of Kay, earlier you were talking about, didn't you say something about somebody going off with a band leader? Anyway.
Yeah, she sang with some famous band. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you, that we were out at Mom's house one Sunday and Kay was out there and she got to talking and was talking about traveling the country with this band leader and singing for him. And I can't remember his darn name. I can't remember anything like that anymore if I don't have a reference. And it doesn't matter. I don't care.
If I heard it, I would probably know.
It was somebody that
I don't know how long she traveled.
It wasn't somebody that I had heard of before, but until that day,
I had
none of us ever knew about that.
Who didn't?
None of us, not me or Claudette.
Nobody in the family knew?
I guess Mama probably knew it, but she didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kay was talking about it, and
again, it's a group that right off the top of my head, I just can't think of it.
So you're still pretty open about when to meet again?
Yeah, about any time. Most of the time.
I'll probably send him a text tonight or tomorrow, or see if if he's got time between walking his miles, if he wants to join us sometime soon.
I wish I could walk a mile now. For somebody who used to run marathons and can't walk across the street, that's discouraging. But I'm glad I'm still upright.
Yeah, it's not that I can't, I just don't.
Yeah, the back surgery for this spinal stenosis is going to be the last straw, that's for sure. I don't want to be completely paralyzed. A lot of these back surgeries don't go well.
So you're going to have that done?
Huh?
So you're going to have that done?
Oh, no, heck no. It would be a last straw. It's a dangerous situation cutting on that spine. Yeah. Yeah, as aggravating as it is, I don't see surgery anytime soon.
So you're still breathing fine?
Yeah, I go upstairs, I'm out of breath for a while, but I don't know whether it has to do with spinal stenosis or from the surgery. I don't know.
Are you still exercising at home?
Yeah, heck, today I've ridden that bicycle 2 hours and 10 minutes today. I'll watch a TV show for about an hour, and then I might go back and read one of my magazines, and then later on go back and read another one. So I do all my reading on the bike. I try to average an hour a day, but sometimes I go way over it. At the end of the week, if I've got my hours in, I might take off a day.
So what does an hour mean for miles?
Have no idea. I don't even keep up with that. What I do is I put everything on the calendar, and I've been doing that for 50 years probably. Like every 10 minutes of exercise I do, goes down as 1 unit. So at the end of the week, I need 42 units, which means I've averaged an hour a day. 6, 7, or 42. So yeah, if I do my yoga, if I do that for 20 minutes, I put down 2 units of workout. And whatever I'm doing. Well, my bike's recumbent. I like where I can sit back real comfortable. Don't have to worry about seats, and just you can read the newspaper or magazine or watch TV or whatever. Otherwise, I couldn't work out just sitting there staring in space. That wouldn't do it for me, I don't think.
No, it is a challenge. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to take off.
Okie doke. Yeah, get up with Reggie and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Carolina got it wrapped up by now, have they?
Oh, they're probably leading by 2 now. Let me see.
That's what turnovers will do to a 15-point lead.
Down to 9 with 5 minutes left.
Oh my, they could still piss it away. Oh well.
I'm not gonna look at it anymore until I get a notice.
All right. Nice talking with you, Charlie.
All right, take care.
Give my love to the family.
Will do.
We'll see you then.
All right. Bye.
Bye.